Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. Thoughts get replayed over and over again, and usually the ones that we don't want. And there are thoughts that indeed keep us up at night. I know you can relate to this. I think we can all relate to this. These are the soundtracks in our heads. We have soundtracks in our heads. We've also talked about music before being an earworm. You've heard that before, right? Because what do earworms do except make us just a little bit bonkers? You know the one that I have in my head right now? Don't ask me why, but it's Eternal Flame by Wilson Phillips. Think about it for a minute. And I know you're going to be cursing me tonight. Do you know my name? You know the song. Anyway, I don't know why, but it hit me when I was doing my doing my setup today for the show. And I kept thinking soundtrack, and then the song, and I have a few songs that every once in a while will just play in my head, and it drives me a little bit bonkers. I have thoughts that do that as well. But, that's why they're called soundtracks. It's the same kind of a deal on repeat. And the fact that it is the same brain that tells you to keep ruminating on something worthless, or telling you it's too late, it's too hard, you're too old, or that you can't, that the fact that your brain can be taught something new is something that we all have to glom onto. That's the thing we need to glom onto, not these old rickety thoughts that are just worthless and super not serving us anymore. Anyway, in the book, he says that we need to play a new soundtrack. I've shared that with you, or at the very least, turn down the volume of the old one that we keep playing. And a lot of times what happens is that we need to kind of get into the place of understanding what the heck is going on, and that we are doing this in the first place. That's the big deal. So here's a couple of things that we've learned along the way with this. And I think I'm going to kind of recap a little bit of the stuff from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, simply because I think it kind of puts, it helps us to go to the next level of this, which we're talking about actual tools of what it is that we need to do. Number one is that your thoughts aren't necessarily true, right? Your thoughts aren't necessarily true, and you don't have to believe everything you think. That was a big eye opener for me. I don't know about you, but for me, that just made me go, whoa, yay. Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing? You don't have to act on everything you think about either, because every once in a while, don't you just want to hit somebody over the head and just say, grow up, stop it, whatever, I do. You know what? You see stupid people all the time. I see stupid people. Well, we all do. And and you see this behavior online. You see it all over the place, and you see it. And yet, if you were to go up to somebody and go whomp them upside the head, even though they probably deserve it, you're going to end up in jail. So we don't act on everything that we see that's out of line, do we? This is why I'm so adamantly against posting stuff that is a stir of the pot when it's a controversial thing. Then it just lowers you to that same level as a troll. It really does. And you're not doing anything. You're just flaunting your confirmation bias. Here I am. This is my, where I stand now on all this stuff. And who cares? No one is the answer to that. But I think that the big thing that got me with all of this thing, and this whole book, here it is, by the way. I took the covers off. I don't like those covers. They just drive me crazy, and they get all in the way. Here's the cover to that book. And the other thing that just really made me go, aha, is that thinking isn't over analyzing. Although we think it is, it's not. Thinking is just thinking sometimes an unsupportive thought over and over again, or an unsupported idea, or something that is even apart from what our lives are today, what our lives are really going on. This is what happens when we hit play and go crazy on old memories that make us feel bad. And our thoughts just run amok all by themselves, without any support, without anything that says, yeah, this is the way that we need to go. It's just like, here it goes again. And how helpful is that? Really? Seriously, how helpful is that? So I think that's an interesting distinction, that overthinking is not overanalyzing. As a matter of fact, we need to pull analyzing out and do a big picture analysis so we can figure out what the heck is going on. Those when we deploy a big picture analysis, what we're doing is saying, okay, we're solution oriented at that point. That's what that does. And it immediately puts our mind into that place of seeking solution. And the thing is, we all have soundtracks. We all have soundtracks. Do men have this issue as well, or do women have these soundtracks, just women? No, everyone does. It's a human thing. What the author makes the point about, which I think is absolutely 100% true, it's our subconscious. It's stuff that's stuck. We have loops that are stuck. We have thoughts that are stuck. We have ideas and notions and old belief systems that are stuck. And we just need to release them and let them go and replace them with something else. Remember, that's the whole thing with retire, replace, and what was the other one? Retire, replace, and repeat. That's it. It's that simple. However, it is a simplistic idea. Deployment of the actual idea and having that happen instead of the old stuff takes a minute. That's why turning down the volume can be so important. So it's easy to remember. And again, think about this. How often do we remember the things in our lives that have either embarrassed the heck out of us, have been absolutely shameful moments where we relive the ugly stuff in our lives and forget about the wins on a daily basis. We forget about the wins on a daily basis. This is why we have our wins on a page daily for Take Back Your Life journal, because I want to make sure that you see that you are winning and that you are doing things on a daily basis that are pro you, that we're not always just wrapped up in these negative, toxic loops. It's just, this is part of our human equation, is what I'm trying to say. So we all have to, and we have to remember too, this is what the amygdala's job is. Our job is to run the amygdala, not the other way around. Because if the amygdala had their way, you'd be sitting in a little corner in a fetal position, afraid to move because everything's risky. Your amygdala is always going to, for the sake of its survival, want to push you into a corner and say, stop, don't do anything, and let's just stay the way we are. Always, always, always. That's how she runs. I call my amygdala Amy. You can call yours whatever you want, but I don't let Amy have the run of the show anymore. I lived in such shame and such perpetual fear of everything, and the things that went on repeat over and over in my head were stuff that I had accepted that other people had said or had done or whatever. And, I allowed a lot of shame into my life. I allowed a lot of stuff into my life and just thought that's the way it was. And when the day that I woke up and said, I don't have to live like that or accept that stuff anymore, that's when I realized I could turn down the volume on that and I could start switching it up. That's why I was so interested in reading this book. So the other thing is that I found so interesting, because one of the things that I love about John is that he does his homework and he does his research. And you know what he said in there that just really blew my mind is how often we change our stories and we change our thoughts for whatever reason. They found over 60% of people did this. Why? And they used a really concrete example of, where were you on 9/11, because everybody remembers where they were on 9/11, right? Well, Interestingly, what they saw, and they did this with students, is they had students write this out their freshman year, what they saw, what they heard, and what they remember, where they were, who they were with, etc. And then their junior year, they asked that same question and had them write it out, and they compared the papers. And interestingly enough, they found that over 60% of them had different memories. They were with different people in different locations, different everything. And when the students were confronted with this is what you wrote your freshman year, this is what you wrote your junior year, they were like, whoa, well, this is the one that's true. Why would I say this? This is lying. It was very confusing. But the point is, this is how our brains operate. They change and fix things and create different details for whatever reason. It's maybe more convenient, easier to remember, whatever. But it's interesting because sometimes our memories aren't accurate. They're not. And sometimes we're actually lying to ourselves. Why? Not on purpose, but ease of accomplishment, a simpler story, easier to remember. The science is out right now. They don't know exactly why. And the same thing goes with trauma. This was an interesting thing too, that our brains on trauma, regardless of the trauma, regardless of how you judge it, our bodies are going to have the same chemical reaction. You know this. We react, we release chemicals into our bodies. There's dopamine, there's serotonin, there's adrenaline on the other side of it. And we get, our bodies send signals all over. And, we're a chemical mayhem, perhaps, or a chemical mix of happy. It just really depends on the, on the situation. Really great example of that I love, which was in an awkward social situation where a teen was maybe ostracized by the popular kids at school, was a traumatic event for that person, just as if they had witnessed a car accident or something very traumatic. We, however, will judge that and say, oh, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. Look, what do they know? They're just not good friends. They're not, whatever. Without recognizing and understanding that our kids have just gone through a big trauma and it has affected them physically as well. And I just kind of would say that makes the case, doesn't it, for listening to our teen? And even though it really isn't a big deal and they'll figure that out themselves as they go on later on in life, right now, they need to be met with where they are. And that was traumatic for them. A little empathy is important. We all have confirmation bias, don't we? We do. We all have confirmation bias. And we're magnets for stuff that we already know or we already believe. We're going to find that stuff because our reticular activating system is always searching for it. We also found that words are precious and carry a lot of weight. So basically, when we make these horrible sweeping statements, I can never lose weight, I am overwhelmed, I can't get organized, and all of this, we are creating commands for our brains. And at that point, it's game off. And you are right. You will not get organized. You will not lose weight. You will be perpetually overwhelmed because of your choice of words. Your brain has no choice. It is a directive. And I think that is just, interesting because our brains don't understand the exasperation or just the frustration that we're going through. They only understand, they take things very black and white. This is why contrasts are so critically important. This is why I oftentimes will do, a lot of hyperbole when I'm trying to make a point of what's what, because that's how we understand. There's some primitiveness in our brains. There's some very complex ways that we think and conceptualize and abstract thinking, the whole 9 yards. But there's also a lot of primitive stuff that we have to overcome. And a lot of that is in the background as a soundtrack. So overthinking the way that we overcome overthinking is simply by action, doing something different. So we start to overthink that I can never lose weight, and we need to jump into something that says, oh, yes, you can, and here's the proof. We're the narrator, we are the narrator of our own lives. You're the star of your own show. You get to direct it. You get to write it. You get to determine what the dialogue is going to be about. You get to do all of that stuff. So if you're not rooting for yourself as the hero in your own movie, then who will? And why should anybody? You know, we got to think about these things because, you know, what will happen? And you've seen this exactly. I know you've seen this. Somebody will say, post, oh, I just can't and everything. And everybody will come to their aid, like a Facebook posters. Oh, I understand completely. And I went this, that, and the other thing or whatever. And oftentimes, you know, this empathetic reach out isn't what that person needs. The person needs to understand that that's not entirely true, that thought isn't true. We don't need empathy on this part. We need to change our minds. So here are some tools that are going to help you with this. And with some of them we went over yesterday, and I think will super help. You know, one of them, of course, is the quote decks. Our quotes have such impact. I shared with you my favorite quote from Ramad Sharma yesterday. What you think about expands what you, now I can't even think about it. Goodness gracious. What you think about expands what you dwell upon ultimately becomes your destiny. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. And I have it usually on my wall, but it fell down, so I need to pick it back up. Yep. There it is. It's sitting right there. But I have quotes everywhere. You know, this one right over here on the wall is, whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. Read that again. Whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. And these are things that we need to look at this, because this is planting new seeds. That's what I think quotes do, is they plant new seeds. It's new seed for thought. It's something to mull over instead of the same old tired story that you've been mulling over. And the same old tired story is the result of overthinking. Am I right? You know I am. Our self-talks, we are self-fulfilling prophecies. I just went through that. So we have to look at the 3 R's. Retire, replace, and repeat. So we want to retire the stuff that obviously doesn't serve us. And then we want to replace it with something that will. And then we want to put it on repeat so that becomes louder and the overthinking stuff becomes quieter, right? Isn't that a good idea? I think so often we don't think that we have the power to do it because we think that, you know, our thoughts are going to run randomly away from us without us. And it's simply not true. It's like opening up the gates. You know, if you had a cattle farm, would you open up the gates and just let your cows do whatever? Or do you corral them and keep them within the confines of the fence? It's precious cargo there, right? That's your livelihood there. It's the same with your brain. Keep the thoughts that you want and get rid of the rest. You know, cattle ranchers do that. They're going to let that coyote out of the fence, probably going to kill it. You know, they're going to make sure that all they have in there are cows, steer, you know, those kind of moo, those guys. They don't want any other animal in there. They don't want any other animal. And that's exactly how it is. We need to be selective about what's in there. It's super important. The other thing is, think about this one. Here's another tool to think about as you start to go into the overthinking about. When you start to say something, and I see this all the time, believe me, I see it in comments here. I see it on blog posts. I see it messaged to me as well. I read somewhere that blank, blank, blank is true. And we pick it up as gospel, you know, not only in the things that we think, but the things that we pick up, and it's just not true. Again, back to that whole thing, is we have to look at what is being said, and we need to track things down, especially in this age of disinformation. I hate to say it, but it's true. We have a lot of disinformation out there. And as a matter of fact, I mean, if you ever start to do some of your own research on nutrition, it'll make you just a little bonkers. You know, you'll say, but what about the China study for the vegan article? And then the omnivores like me will come back and say it's flawed and here are the reasons why. And it's just this back and forth thing. But the thing is that we all need to be detectives about the things that we're reading about and say, but is it true? Because we don't need to be planting new seeds of disinformation into our heads, do we? No, we don't. Hi, Piper. I'm so glad you're here. Vanessa's girls, sweet as punch. One of the things that I have started saying, and I learned this from, oh gosh, why can't I think of his name? David something. Look at, I'm just like having brain farts all day. Sorry. But smart guy, and he used to say this all the time: everything is working out for me. Everything is always working out for me. And I love that. I think Marie Forleo, there's a bunch of other people that have said that everything is figure outable. I love this because it opens the door to possibilities, and it stops all the crazy talk and all the things that we can't do, and puts instead in its place the idea of possibility. And if we have possibility, then we have hope. We don't have hope if we're just pushed into a corner, do we? In the fetal position, as the amygdala would like. Think about that for a minute. The hope is in this idea that everything is always working out for me. And then guess what happens? You've put this notion out, and now it's up to your brain to start searching for, and it will, because that's what it does, the evidence to support that. That's what the reticular activating system does. And it helps to lose all this idea of that I can't, or I'm too overwhelmed, or I'm too this, or I'm too that, and I can't because of this and that and this. And that just becomes thick and insurmountable. Everything is always working out for me. Everything. And watch how all of a sudden, some serendipitous stuff just starts to happen. This happens and that happens. Somebody shows up. You get you get a phone call that you weren't expecting. You get something else. Maybe something comes in the mail. Has that happened to you before? I can't even tell you how many times that has happened to me. I remember a long time ago when I started saying everything is always working out for me. And I very particular, I remember we were having, I had launched, I don't even want to tell you this, but I had another business where I was putting together databases of recipes for wellness folks. And I had hired somebody to run it. I had all this, it was a big investment. I got investors on it. It didn't work out, by the way, but I had all this going on. And I just remember at the time when it was just, I was kind of worried about the big outlay of money and everything. And I started using this. Everything is always working out for me. Well, don't you know, I was looking at, we're going to go into the negative this month, and what am I going to do? And I was sweating bullets. And I still was saying, everything always works out for me. Everything is always working out for me. And I got this odd email, and it was from Vanity Fair Napkins. And Vanity Fair Napkins and I, long story short, I did a whole tour for them, and they sent me a nice big fat check, and it all worked out. But at the time, I was scared to death. At the time, I was starting to go into the negative loop and just look for all the evidence to say, I need to just shut this thing down and do something else. But that's not what happened, because I believed with all of my heart that somehow, some way, this was all going to work out. And if money is just energy, well, let's bring the vibe up. let's just go from there, So it really, it's really incredible how this all works out. And I invite you to write this down, maybe on a 3x5 card, put it in your car, put it in your wallet, put it in your bathroom mirror if you need to, but put it everywhere. Everything is always working out for me, and let it be so. And remember too, piggybacking right on that, you find what you're looking for. So, and what you're really looking for may not line up with what you're actually getting. And that has a lot to do with, again, overthinking. Whether you're saying it out loud or it's just you're saying it in your head, it's still the incongruity of the whole thing. This is why you get, mentally fatigued too. It's because what you're experiencing and what you're saying can be two different things. This is a quote from the book from John Acuff. I don't know how to say his name. Acuff? Really good one. Fear comes free. Faith takes work. Isn't that the truth? Fear comes free, but faith takes work, because we need to stand in belief of faith, even when we can't see what the heck is going on. So the proof and evidence won't come knocking at your door, just like motivation won't. It's just not going to show up for you. You have to be on the lookout for it, and you have to find it. That's part of the action, really, of doing this whole thing. Number 7 is to see it, say it, and write it down. Everything is always working out for me. I'll show you. You know what? I can tell you. This is my little Dollar General notebook. And in there, I can't tell you how many times I've written that out. Everything is always working out for me because, when I do this, I watch how things change for me. When I do this, I look for and find all the evidence that I want to support me. If I was choosing to, I could also find all the evidence I didn't want to support me as well, or to not support me as well. You see what I mean? Just to convict me. We're like lawyers in that way, we are. It just depends what side you're on. So here's the thing. This is kind of how I'm tying the whole thing up. It's a vibe. That's what this is. It is a vibe. Soundtracks are a vibe. What's in your head is a vibe. So your words, the music, the music. Remember the earworm that I just told you about? The people and the action, everything that you're around, that could be high vibe or it can be low vibe. But I'll tell you this. I know this. A low vibe, business as normal. Just ignoring and just going on and not even dealing with the thoughts that are in your head and then allowing whatever to happen, just as we've always done, because that's how we always do life. All the negative stuff and all the negative action and all the negative this, that, and the other thing to support this broken soundtrack in your head. And I just want to say to you that you are enough, that you have the capability of completely shifting gears and doing things the way that you want to. It's time to align, though, the stuff that's in our head, the soundtracks of our head, with the stuff that we want. And you can. I hope that was helpful. Good, Joanne. I'm glad you're there. I'm actually going to go through my notes tonight and see if I can't beef them up a little bit, too. Good. I'm so glad, Vanessa. I'm glad she said it helped her for today. I'm so glad. Say hi to the girls. Give them a hug for me. Give your kids a hug too, grandkids, whomever, your dog, cat, whomever. And I will just say, I would like to thank every one of you for joining us every single day that you do, for sharing these videos if you found them useful, and for being a part of my life. You make all the difference in the world. Honestly, you do. I appreciate you. Peace be with you. Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.